many young boys and girls grew up reading the stories of young Laura Ingalls on the prairie. Of course, there's a story in the cabin in the woods up by Lake Pepin and on the banks of Plum Creek in Walnut Grove, Minnesota. But there's many other stories that aren't mentioned in the book. And today, we're going to check out a few of those sites, like the Masters Hotel here in Burr Oak, Iowa. Burr Oak, Iowa is just a stone's throw from Minnesota, maybe 2 miles, just north of Decorah, Iowa. It's actually where I grew up. See, the stories you know about from the books are great, but some of the stories you don't know about the travels that she had that aren't in the books are just as interesting. She lived here at the Masters Hotel for only about 10 months. Her dad was the manager here. This is in between the cabin in the big woods, which is Lake Pepin, and on the banks of Plum Creek, which is Walnut Grove, Minnesota. You can visit the Masters Hotel here in Burr Oak. You stop over at the Mercantile Building, which is the Visitors Center. $10 for adults, I think it's $5 or $4 for kids, and you can come in and take a tour and find out about this wonderful place where Laura spent time before heading out west, where she wrote even more of her books. Charles was the manager here at the Masters Hotel. He and his wife Carolyn actually birthed the child here. That's where Grace was born, right here in Burr Oak, Iowa. This covered wagon is the style in which the Ingalls and so many other families would have used to trek across the prairies moving to the west. There was a lot of opportunity, a lot of land, and a lot of hard work, and it didn't always work out. The Ingalls family faced a lot of trials and tribulations, and the fact of the matter is they lost everything more than once. The reason they came here was after things fell apart on the banks of Plum Creek the first time. They came back here for 10 months to regather before setting out farther west once again. Spring Valley, Minnesota is another big Laura place. Actually, it's more an Almanzo place. This barn right here is the barn and the farmstead where Almanzo Wilder grew up. And in fact, later on in their lives, they came back to live. Laura and Almanzo came back here to Spring Valley, Minnesota after things didn't go well in De Smet, South Dakota. Not only did they lose everything after a fire and hordes of grasshoppers had eaten all their crops, they got diphtheria so bad that, honestly, they nearly died. On the advice of Almanzo's relatives, they said, come back here to Spring Valley. So they came back here to try to recover and rebuild before they set off on their next adventures to build a life. This Methodist church has been here since the beginning of Almanzo. This is where his family, the Wilder family, moved back in the 1870s, and where he grew up before he moved to De Smet, South Dakota, eventually meeting Laura and getting married. Eventually they came back and lived here in this area. They were churchgoers here. There's records showing that not only did Almanzo and Laura give money, but Almanzo's parents were very generous donors to the church. Laura lived a heck of a life out in the prairies and in the woods in multiple different states in the upper Midwest, but that's not where she finished. For that, hey Brian, why don't you take it from here?
Welcome to Mansfield, Missouri. We are here because this is the home of Laura Ingalls Wilder. She and her husband Almanzo moved here in 1894, and they lived here until Laura died in 1957. We are on our way to the house where they lived, and we're not allowed to shoot video inside, so we'll taking a bunch of still photos, and then we'll be putting them together for you to see right now. Standing in front of the house that was finished in the early 19-teens. They immediately began working on it when they arrived here. They lived in a log cabin for a couple of years, but over the course of the next 20 years, they improved and finally moved into what would become this structure. This is one of those locations that isn't mentioned in the books. You know, her novels were based only on her childhood and her early marriage. It didn't include her retirement, and we're glad we could bring you here. We're not quite done yet. Thanks for joining us on our trip to see some of the sites that are connected to Laura Ingalls Wilder, especially the ones here in Mansfield, Missouri, where she wrote all of those novels. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we hope you go out and see your own history and the things that are close to your house. Until next time.